Good morning, students. Today we have to start with chapter 2 of economic sectors of Indian economy, grade 10th. So let's start with now defining economy. First of all, understand what is the meaning of economy. So students, an economy is a system of organization and institutions that help and facilitate in production, distribution of resources among members of a society. And in economy we do very careful management of available resources. So this was our economy. Now let's see the economic activity. What is the meaning of economic activity? The production, distribution and consumption of commodities. So economic activity is an activity of providing, making, buying, selling of commodities or services by people to satisfy day-to-day needs of life. And in other words, students, any activities involving money or exchange of products or services are called economic activity. So economic activity is an activity of making something, purchasing something, selling of goods and services. Means selling, if we see selling, working for money, making, producing something to sell, buying, distributing goods. So this all comes under economic activity. So any action that involves production, distribution or consumption of products and services is an economic activity. So on the page 19 of your book, some pictures are given. By looking at them, so you will be able to find that how people are engaged in various economic activities. So some of these are activities producing goods like bricklane. You can see the workers are working in the bricklane. Some are producing services, means providing services, like the head load worker is seen, which is coolie. Then the delivery person, the person is delivering a parcel to the woman. So these activities, one shopkeeper woman, she's selling the garments to the customer. So these activities are happening around us every minute, as even as we speak. So now how do we understand these activities? So one way of doing this is to group them using some important criteria. So these groups are also called sectors. So the economic activities result in the production of goods and services, while sectors are the group of economic activities classified on the basis of some criteria. So now we have to see that criteria according to which we group them. So on the basis of nature of activity, how we classify, so we'll see it on the page 20. Now page 20 of your NCERT book, students. There are many activities that are undertaken by directly using natural resources. So now we are dividing our economic activities on the basis of nature of activity into three sectors. So let's see that there are many activities that are undertaken by directly using natural resources. So we are directly exploiting natural resources here. Take for example the cultivation of cotton. So it takes place within a crop season, so we cultivate cotton. And for the growth of cotton plant, we depend on natural factors like rainfall, sunshine and climate. So these are the factors on which agriculture depends, and the product of this activity, cotton, is a natural product. Okay, so similarly wheat is also a natural product. Milk is also a natural product. Similarly, in case of like dairy, so we depend upon biological process of animals and fodder, and the product here is the milk, so that is also a natural product. Similarly, minerals, ores from the mining, so that are also our natural products. So students, when we produce goods by exploiting natural resources, it is an activity of primary sector. So where we are exploiting the nature and we are extracting something from the nature, so that activity is concerned with the primary sector. Now why primary? This is because it forms the base for all other products that we later on make. So it is providing base to all other products that later on we will make in other sectors. So since most of the natural products we get from agriculture, dairy, fishing, forestry, so this sector, mining also, so this sector is also called agriculture and the related sector. So in primary sector all these things will be included, mining, agriculture, dairy, fishing, forestry. So main the focus is on the agriculture here. Now this was the agriculture sector. Now second is our secondary sector. Now the secondary sector covers activities in which natural products are changed into another forms through the way of manufacturing or some industrial activity or some other manufacturing process is used in order to convert the natural product into the into other manufactured product. It is the next step after the primary sector, and the product is not produced by nature here, but it has to be made, and therefore some process of manufacturing is required. Like now the manufacturing can be done in factory, at home if it is small scale or very small scale, or it can be any workshop unit. So here we can do any production, like for example using a cotton fiber from the plant, we make a thread and then we weave a cloth. So it can be in a factory, it can be in any small unit. Similarly from a wheat, we can make a wheat flour, or we can make from a wheat we can make a bread. Okay, so using like sugar cane as a raw material, we can make gur, okay, jaggery or sugar. So and we convert earth into the bricks and use bricks to make houses and buildings. So since this sector gradually became associated with different kinds of industry, so this is also known as industrial sector. So our secondary sector is also known as industrial sector. So this is our second sector, from where we'll get the raw material from the primary sector and we convert them into some other product. And I have given you example, from wheat we are making flour, or we are making bread or biscuit, anything, and from the sugar cane we are making sugar or gur. Now after primary and secondary, the third is tertiary sector, and it is different from the above two, because these are the activities, the tertiary activities that help in development of primary and secondary sector. So the tertiary sector, it helps in the development of primary and secondary sector, and the tertiary activities by themselves do not produce any good. So here we are not producing any good, but we are providing the services that provide support for the production process. For example, like the goods that are produced in the primary and secondary sector, now they need to be transported by trucks and trains so that it can reach the market where it can be sold to the consumers. So transport facilities come under tertiary sector. Now sometimes we need to store our this production in the godowns, so godowns, the storage facility also come under the tertiary sector. Then communication facility, phones, this mobiles, everything, and then the communication, this letters and all, and then we have to borrow money also for our day-to-day functioning of the business, or for the long term also we require money. So how, from where the money is coming? Banking. Okay, so the banking also come under the tertiary sector. So all these activities, if we talk about the storage, the transport, the banking, this all come under the tertiary sector. So the transport, storage, communication, banking, trade, these are the examples of the tertiary sector activities. So since these activities generate services rather than goods, so the tertiary sector is also called the service sector. So basically this sector provides the services, so this is known as service sector. Now the service sector also includes some of the essential services that may not be directly provide help in the production of goods. For example, the teachers, the doctors. Okay, so these are not related with the agriculture, but these also come under tertiary sector. And some personal services provider like washermen, barbers, cobblers, lawyers. So we have skilled also, we have unskilled also. Then administrative, and the people who are providing administrative and accounting works. And then the new services which is coming up in tertiary sector is IT, information technology, internet cafes, ATM booths, call centers, software companies. So all these have become important in our economy. So these all fall under the tertiary sector. Now moving to page 22, students, of your NCERT book. Now we have to compare the three sectors. So we have seen the three sectors of Indian economy, which is based on the nature of activity, that is primary, secondary and tertiary sector. Now we have to compare these three sectors. So the various production activities in the primary, secondary and tertiary sector produce a very large number of goods and services. So obviously if three sectors are there and we are doing production, and you know the Indian economy is a vast economy, so very large number of goods and services we will produce in three sectors. And also in three sectors, now who will do production? People only. So the people working in them, the people, there are large number of people who will be working under these sectors, who will produce goods and services. Now our next step is to see how much goods and services are produced and how many people are working in this sector. And in economy, there could be one or more sector which are dominant in terms of total production and employment, and while other sectors are relatively small. So if we see in the case of Indian economy, in the terms of the employment, if we see the agriculture sector, the primary sector is more dominant. And if we see in the terms of total production, that is the output and GDP, then the tertiary sector is more dominant. Now the question is, how do we count various goods and services and know the total production in each sector? What is the criteria? Because it is very difficult because to compare the sector, to do the calculation of the output, because in one sector we are producing wheat and milk, and in the other sector we are producing bricks, and in the third we are providing services. So it is very difficult to compare the sectors. So our economist has suggested a very right approach, that we have to go for the total value of goods and services. Means we have to see in the monetary aspects, we have to see the currency aspect. Now we have to see the total value of goods and services rather than adding up the actual number. So like for example, if 10,000 kg of wheat is sold at 8 rupees per kg, then the value of that will be, wheat will be 80,000. And similarly the value of 5,000 coconuts at rupees 10 will be 50,000. So we will take these values into account. Similarly the value of goods and services in the three sector are calculated and then added up. So whatever production we are doing, so according to their value we will add them, and then we will arrive at our GDP. But there is one precaution we have to take. Not every good and services produced and sold need to be counted. Only value of final goods and services we have to take. For example, the farmer, he is selling the wheat to the flour mill at rupees 8 per kg. Then the flour mill is selling the flour at rupees 10 per kg to the biscuit company, and then biscuit company, after adding the other ingredients to the flour like sugar and other milk, oil, then they are manufacturing the biscuit and they are selling at rupees 60. Means 4 packets are there, 15 per packet they are selling, so 60. Now if we see the primary product, the basic product is wheat. Okay, then it is transferred to the secondary sector, it is transferred to the flour mill, and then from the basic product they convert it into the flour. And so here the product is intermediate product. The flour is the intermediate product. Now what is the intermediate product? The products which are used in the production of final goods and services. Then the intermediate product got converted into the biscuit. So this is a final product. So we will not add 8 plus 10 plus 60. We will add only 60 rupees. Final goods and services. The value of final goods and services will only be counted, because the value of final goods and services also include the value of intermediate goods. So this we have to keep in mind. So now moving to page 23. So I told you that to count the value of flour and wheat separately is not correct, because then we will be doing double counting. Same thing again and again we will be counting, first as a wheat, then as a flour, then as a biscuit. So it will not make any sense. Only value of final goods and services, because final goods already include the value of intermediate goods. The value of final goods and services produced in each sector during a particular year provides the total production of the sector for that year, and the sum of production in the three sectors gives us GDP, gross domestic product of the goods. So when we will calculate all the value of final goods and services produced in each sector during a particular year, it will gives us a total production of the sector for that year. And when we will club the production of the three sectors separately, it will give us our GDP. So what is GDP? The sum of production in three sectors is GDP, our total output of the country. So it is the value of all final and goods services produced within a country during a particular year. So that is GDP, and GDP shows how big the economy is. Like now in the India, if we talk about 2020, we, according to GDP, we are the fifth largest economy in the world. And in India, this huge task of measuring GDP is undertaken by central government ministry. So who's doing this calculations? The central government. And this ministry, with the help of various government departments throughout the states and UTs, they collect the information regarding the total output, the total production of the goods and services, and then at the current prices, and then they estimate the GDP. Now moving to historical changes in the sectors. Now generally it has been noted that from the histories, if we see the history of the development of many developed countries, then at the initial stages of development, primary sector was the most important sector of the economic activity. So we start, all the developed economies, they started from agriculture only, even though in the smaller proportions, but they started from the agriculture only. As the methods of farming changed, agriculture sector began to prosper. It produced much more food than before. Like if we see in our case also, the green revolution happened, so we produce bumper crops, our production increased, the income of our farmers increased, their standard of living increased, improved, and many people could now take up other activities. So now the people, they have more income, they can start other activities also. Then there were increasing number of crafts persons also, so traders also increased, the production increased, traders also increased, buying and selling activities increased. So due to this, transporters, administrators, army, all these people increased. But however, at this stage, most of the goods produced were natural products from the primary sector, and most people are employed in this sector only. So the primary sector is booming, and most of the people are employed in primary sector only. Then over a long time, then especially because new methods of manufacturing were introduced, then factories came up and the factories started expanding. Then the people who were working on farms, they started migrating due to the opportunities in the urban areas. Urbanization happened, industrialization happened, and then the people, now they began to use more goods produced by the industrial sector, because industrial sector, the mass production is there and the rates are very cheap. And then secondary sector gradually became the most important if we see the total production and the employment. But hence over time a shift had taken place. This means that importance of sectors have changed. So we are seeing the importance of sectors here. From primary, the shift is to secondary, and in the past 100 years there has been further shift from secondary to tertiary sector in the developed countries. Service sector has become more important. The activities like tourism, mass media, marketing, IT, teachers, hospitals, so all these services come under the tertiary sector, and the service sector has become most important in terms of production, and most of the people who are working, they are employed in service sector only. And this is the general pattern, if you see, which is observed in all the developed countries. Now page 24, students, here we have to now see the primary, secondary and tertiary sectors in India. So here certain graphs are given, if you see on your book, page 24, on page 24. So the graph 1 clearly shows the production of goods and services in the three sector, and it is clearly evident that the trend is given for the 2 years, 1970 and 71 and 2010 and 11. So the production has increased in all the sectors, but it is clearly evident that tertiary sector is leading. If we see the GDP contribution to the economy by the tertiary sector, it is maximum if in the graph 1, which is given on the page 24. So it is clearly evident that the three sectors are increasing in the production, but tertiary sector is leading. Now why the tertiary sector is leading, or the rising importance of the tertiary sector in production, what are the causes, why the tertiary sector is becoming so important in India? So several reasons are there, and this is a direct question which can be asked. Now over the 40 years, if you see the period from 1971 to 2010 and 11, while production in all the three sectors has increased, no doubt, but it has increased mostly in the tertiary sector. And as a result, in the year 2010 and 11, the tertiary sector has emerged as the largest producing sector and replacing the primary sector. Now why? What are the reasons? So let's see the reasons. First, in any country, several services such as hospitals, educational institutions, post and police, courts, village administrative offices, municipal corporations, defense, transport, banks, insurance companies are required. So all these basic facilities are required in any of the developing countries, and in these can be considered as the basic services, and in a developing country the government has to take responsibility for the provision of these services. So all these services, if we see, like transport, banks, insurance, defense, police stations, hospitals, educational institution, this is provided by the government in our country. So that's why this sector is increasing. Second, the development of the agriculture and industry leads to the development of services. So if our industry is developing, our agriculture, that is primary and secondary sector is developing, then the tertiary sector will also grow. How? Because if agriculture and industry will develop, then people will demand more of transport, more storage facility, more trade. So we have seen this earlier also. So on page 25 now, we were discussing the rising importance of the tertiary sector. We were discussing the second point, that is the development of agriculture industry leads to the development of tertiary sector also. So this is the interdependence of the three sectors of Indian economy. So if agriculture and industry is improving and rising, so obviously the tertiary sector will also grow. People will demand more of transport, trade, storage and other facilities, and greater the development of primary and secondary sector, more would be the demand for such services. Now third reason, or the third factor, as the income level rises, students of the people in the economy, if the purchasing power increases, then certain section of the people, they start demanding more services, like they want to eat out, they want to spend their time out in restaurants, in the malls, in the theaters. Tourism will increase, people would like to move out of their country, shopping, private hospitals, rather than going to government hospital. If the people can afford, they will go for the private hospitals, private schools, professional training. So you can see this change, and this is quite evident in the big cities. Now the another reason, that over the fourth reason, now certain new services coming up in the field of IT, and this is also becoming most important, and the production of these services has also been rising. But so this we are talking about the rising importance of the tertiary sector, but now there is a disparity also in the tertiary sector. All the areas, all the sections, they are not growing at the same pace. Like if we talk about the skilled sector, the portion of the tertiary sector where the skilled and the educated workers are employed, that is only growing, and where this unskilled workers, they are working, that is not managing that good. Like you must remember that not all services is growing equally well. Like service sector in India, it employs different kind of people, we have different kind of people. At one end there is a limited number of services that employ highly skilled and educated workers, okay, like in schools, in hospitals, okay, in IT. So educated and skilled workers are required, so that is only growing. And on the other hand, there are large number of workers engaged in small services like shopkeepers, repair shops, transport, and these people, they barely manage to earn their living, and yet they perform these services because they don't have any alternative opportunity to go anywhere. So hence only a part of this sector is growing. As I told you, only a section of this sector is growing, okay. Now, so where are the most of the people employed? So first we have seen the GDP. According to GDP, the tertiary sector is rising, and we have seen why it is rising, the reasons also. Now we have to see where most of the people are employed. So now on page 25, graph 2, so it presents the percentage share of three sectors in GDP. So GDP ratios are given for the three sectors, and you can directly see the change here also. And the remarkable fact that India is, while there has been change in the share of the three sectors in GDP, the similar shift has not taken place in employment. If we see the graph 2, it is clearly evident that tertiary sector is leading in the case of GDP share, if you see the statistics of 71 to 2010-11 2-year comparison is given, so it is clearly evident that in 2010 and 11 the tertiary sector is contributing more. And if we see that in 70-71, at that time the primary sector was contributing more in terms of GDP, and now the shift is visible that clearly the tertiary sector is contributing highest in the GDP. But if we talk about the employment share, here that shift is not visible. In graph 3 it is clearly evident that still the primary sector is there in the employment. More than half of the population is still engaged in agriculture, and very less proportion of people are there employed in the tertiary sector. So what does it show? That why didn't a similar shift out of the primary sector happen in case of employment? Why this not happened? In means, if we say that tertiary sector is leading in the GDP and primary sector is least contributing in the GDP, then why it is so that in employment the primary sector is leading? And why even the tertiary sector is providing very less employment to the people, why they are contributing more to the GDP? Okay, so we have to discuss that enough jobs were not created in the secondary and tertiary sector. This is the reason. This is the reason that why more employment is there still in the primary sector, because enough jobs are not there. People can't be absorbed in the secondary and tertiary sector. So on page 26, so we were talking about the employment, that if we see the employment, primary sector is still providing employment to more than half of the population of our country. So why this is so? More of the employment opportunities not been created in the secondary and tertiary sector. So if we see the Indian economy, students, I have told you that from primary sector we directly leapfrog to the tertiary sector, means our growth is not that much in the secondary sector because of the different factors. I have told you that why our secondary sector did not grow that much fairly well, because of there are different factors. Means why? Because of there is a low growth in the secondary sector. License Raj was there during the Indira Gandhi and Nehru regime. Restriction was there on the foreign investment. Then stringent labor laws were there. Lack of skilled labor, import of cheap manufactured goods. So all these things went against our secondary sector. And now we have to see that why still the employment is more in the primary sector, but still the GDP contribution is less, because of the concept of disguised unemployment which is prevalent in our agriculture sector. Now what is the concept of disguised unemployment? Suppose a plot of the land is there, and on that plot the 5 persons of the family are working, and it is a very small plot, and they have given the story of Lakshmi also on page 26 to relate to this. And she is having very small plot of land, and the 5 members of her family is engaged there only. And if we safely remove 3 persons from there, then the output will not be affected. So it means the 3 persons are disguisedly unemployed in the agriculture. So disguisedly unemployed means underemployment. It is a situation of underemployment where it seems that the people are working, but they are not working to their full potential. They are capable of doing much more better than what they are doing. They are just sitting idle there. And if we will remove 3 persons, then output also will not be affected. So this is disguised unemployment, and this is a type of underemployment. Underemployment, it is hidden in contrast to someone who is unemployed, and hence it is called disguised unemployment. Means it seems that the people are working, but they are not working to their full potential. And if we remove these 2-3 persons to some other job, we'll provide them, we migrate them to some other area, then it is better. It will supplement the income of the family, and even the output will not be affected. So if some landlord comes and hire 2 or 3 members of the family to work on his land, then their income will also increase through wages. So this is the disguised unemployment. So we have seen that the employment is more in the agriculture, but the GDP contribution is less. So reason is disguised unemployment. And there are the lack of the farmers like Lakshmi in India. So this means that even if we remove lot of the people from the agriculture sector and provide them proper work somewhere else, the agriculture production will not be affected. So this underemployment can also happen in other sectors. Yeah, obviously in not only in primary sector, disguised unemployment is also seen in the secondary sector. If small scale industry is there and full family is managing the small scale industry, so same happens in the secondary sector also, and in tertiary sector also. If some shop is there and full family is working in that shop, so same is the case with secondary and tertiary sector also. And similarly we see other peoples of the service sector also on the street pushing a cart, selling something, where they spend the whole day but they don't earn that much, like carpenters, painters. Okay, in rural area also we see this kind of work, plumbers. Okay, so they don't earn that much. Now page 27. So we have seen disguised unemployment is there in the agriculture sector. Now then, how to create more employment, from how to tackle this situation, how to adjust all these people who are there in the agriculture sector, who are overburdening the agriculture sector, how to absorb them in other sectors, how to create more employment opportunities. So now there are also people who are not employed at all. So in what ways we can increase employment and how the government will help here. So now relate with the story of Lakshmi only. So if government can spend some money or the bank can provide a loan to her to construct a well for her family to irrigate the land, then Lakshmi will then be able to irrigate her land, and she will be able to take the second crop also during the Rabi season, say wheat. So let us suppose that 1 hectare of wheat can provide employment to 2 people for 50 days, including all the work of sowing, watering, fertilizer, harvesting. So continuing on page now 28. So we were talking about how to increase employment. So we were talking about the first case, that in case if government provide the loans or provide the better irrigation facilities, then it will be better for the small farmers. So the 2 more members of the Lakshmi family can be employed in her field, so the employment increase. Suppose government construct a new dam, canal, then also to irrigate the farms of many such people, so then also employment will increase. So this could lead to employment generation in agriculture sector only. Then the second, we can see that investing in the transport. Okay, now the farmers, they are producing good crops now, so they have to sell their surplus to the market. So the government can provide the transportation facilities, storage facilities. They can make better rural roads so that mini trucks can reach everywhere. So this also employment will be generated. Okay, the people, they can go for transport, they can go for storage facility. Okay, government can build the rural village roads, so employment can be generated like this. So the third is, now Lakshmi need is not confined to water alone. To cultivate, she needs another things also, seeds, fertilizers, agriculture equipments, pump sets. So being a poor farmer, she can't afford everything, so she need to borrow money from the money lender. But if she goes to the money lender, again the problem will be there of informal source of credit. They will charge high rate of interest from her. Exploitation of poor farmers will be more. So here local banks, the Grameen banks, they can provide credit. If local banks, they can give credit at the reasonable rate, it will be very good for her. She can cultivate her land and buy all these things in time, and along with water. So this need to provide so this means that along with water, we also need to provide the cheap agriculture credit to the farmers. So again employment will be generated. Now the another way how the employment can be generated is to locate industry in the semi-rural area. So in this we can identify, we can promote and locate the industries in the semi-rural area. Not only in rural area, between rural and urban area we can do this. Like many farmers, they grow the chickpeas, pulse crop, arhar. So we can set up a dal mill to procure and process this, then sell in the city. Women can be kept as the laborers, so they can clean this dal, they can pack them very nicely, and then the farmers can sell them in cities. Then opening a cold storage. Perishable commodities are there, milk and this fruits and vegetables, so they are perishable, so the cold storage can be opened. Then potatoes and onions products, storage facility can be provided. Rather than selling this potatoes, tomatoes directly, the farmers, they can process them, they can make chips and then sell them, they can make ketchups and then sell the their products, so it will fetch them more income, and it will also contribute to the GDP, because we have seen in GDP the value of final goods and services is counted. Then honey collection centers can be set up. Okay, then so these many things we can do to provide the employment, okay, in the semi rural areas. Then on page 29, continuing, then we have seen that we can improve our education sector. We can open more schools. So if we are opening more schools, then we require more buildings, then more teachers and other stuff. So again, employment will be generated in the education sector only. Study conducted by the Planning Commission. So earlier Planning Commission was there, now Niti Aayog is their National Institution for Transforming India. So they estimate that lakhs of jobs can be created in education sector only. Then we can improve our health sector. So many doctors, nurses and health workers we need in the rural area. So in this way employment can be generated. Then we can improve our tourism, okay, our tourism sector. So that is also having lot of you can say lot of boost we can give to this sector. Campaigns are being done by our stars, Atithi Devo Bhava. Okay, so this is to boost this sector. Then we can lay emphasis on the regional craft industry, or like if we talk about Punjab, then Punjabi Fulkari, Punjabi Juttis, they are in great demand. The Riyan of Punjab, they have a great demand in the world. So that can also be given a boost, and the women can get employment if the government intervention is there. New services like IT, so lot of employment can be generated, but with proper planning and support from government. Okay, but students, all this is a long term measures. It will take a time to implement, but we need some short term measures, very quick measures. Okay, so recognizing this, the central government in India, they have made a law implementing right to work in 200 districts, and this is known as NREGA. So our government implemented NREGA, National Rural Employment Guarantee Act 2005. So it was launched so that in a short measure can be taken and employment can be provided to the rural poor. Okay, 100 days of assured employment is provided. Rest days, the landless workers, they can do some agriculture job and something else, but for 100 days the employment is provided to the rural poor, those who are able to work as a manual labor, unskilled work. And then if government fails to provide, then government provides the allowance, okay, unemployment allowance for 15 days. If the government fail to provide any work to these people, then they will be getting unemployment allowance. So in this, under NREGA, we can do construction of roads, canals, ponds and wells. So all this work is taken, and now in 625 districts this NREGA is being implemented. So this NREGA is implemented by Gram Panchayat. Now it is Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, and the involvement of the private contractors is completely banned. So here 100 days of guaranteed employment is provided. So in rural level, this rural area, this survival package is direly required now. See the COVID conditions, so this kind of package is also required in urban areas also, the survival package. Okay, so this kind of help our government should do in order to increase the employment in the rural and urban areas also. Now moving to page 30. So here we have to see the organized and the unorganized sector. Now earlier we have seen the classification of the sector on the basis of nature of activity. Now we have to see on the classification of sector on the basis of condition of work, or how people are employed. So how it can be done now into organized and unorganized sector. So our organized sector, here the story of Kanta and Kamal is given. Okay, so you can easily read what is happening with Kanta. She works in office. She attends her office from 9:30 to 5:30. She gets her salary regularly. In addition to the salary, she also get other benefits like provident fund. Okay, she also get other medical allowances, and she has not to go to office on Sunday, that is a paid holiday. And when she joins, she also get the employment letter where all terms and conditions of work is mentioned. On the other hand, Kamal is Kanta's neighbor, and he is working as a daily wage laborer at the grocery shop, and he works from 7:30 in the morning to 8, and he gets no other allowance apart from wage. He is not paid for the days he does not go to work. he has no leave, no paid holidays, he does not have any appointment letter, and he can be asked to leave anytime by his employer. So without telling you, you can easily bifurcate that Kanta is working in organized sector and Kamal is working in unorganized sector. So here we have to see the features of organized sector. So under organized sector, work under the supervision of government, okay, directly under the supervision of registration is done with the government, and they follow the rules and regulations properly in the form of Factories Act, they have to register themselves, Minimum Wages Act they have to follow. Security of employment is there in the organized sector. It is not that you can be thrown any time out, no, fixed working hours are there, paid leaves are there, overtime payment for overtime is also done, medical and housing benefits are there, pension is there. So government employees, all the industrial workers, they come under the organized sector. Now so this was organized sector. Moving to page 31, here we have to see the unorganized sector. So unorganized sector is outside the control of the government, no rules and regulations are followed. Here no job security is there, and jobs are very low paid, no paid leave, no benefits of overtime, working hours are not fixed, no other benefits, okay. And who are there in the unorganized sector? All the landless laborers, rickshaw pullers, shopkeepers, farmers, domestic workers. So all these are under the category of the people who are working in unorganized sector. So now page 32 of your book, students. Earlier we have seen the conditions of the organized and unorganized sector, and we have seen the exploitation is there in the unorganized sector. So if exploitation is there, then we have to protect now the workers in the unorganized sector. So now if you see unorganized sector students, what is happening, the features we have seen, that the work is not secure, job is not secure, no paid leave, outside the control of the government, rules and regulations are not followed. So the organized sector people prefer to work in the organized sector. Employment opportunities are better, but they are expanding very slowly in the organized sector. Now it is very common to find that many organized sectors they are entering into the unorganized sector. Means organized sector, they are not registering themselves with the government. Now why do this? Why they do so? In order to obey the taxes, and they refuse to follow laws that protect laborers. So if they will not register themselves with the government, they have not to obey all the rules and regulations laid down under the organized sector. So as a result, large number of workers, they are forced to enter the unorganized sector. So if no opportunity is there in the organized sector, they have to go to unorganized sector and work there, and they compensate to work, they compromise to work even at the low salary. There they are exploited, the workers, they are not paid the fair wages, and their earnings are low, not regular, their jobs are not secure. So and since 1990, it is common to see large number of workers, they are losing their jobs in the organized sector. Okay, new economic policy, the economic reforms came. After that, the more problems came for the workers, and these workers are forced to take up the jobs in the unorganized sector with low earnings. Besides they have to do more work there. So there is a need for protection and support of the workers in the unorganized sector. Then if we see the rural areas, there we have landless laborers, small and marginal farmers, sharecroppers, artisans. Now how government can help them? Government can help them through timely delivery of the seeds. Timely delivery can be provided of the seeds. Agriculture inputs can be provided. Cheap credit can be provided to this. Storage facilities and marketing outlets can be provided. So this is how the government can protect the unorganized sector in the rural areas. Then the urban areas, small scale industry workers are there, casual workers are there, casual workers who are not getting the regular work. Okay, daily they are working on the this wages only. So in construction sites we can see them, street vendors are there, rack pickers are there. So here also government should help them, small scale industry, in procuring raw material, marketing of their output. So they also need protection. Like the Madhya Pradesh government, recently they have started Indira Rasoi for these kind of workers. So they at very minimal prices they are providing food to them, so that these workers, at least these kind of people, this unorganized sector workers who are not having any work now, because of the COVID scenario, they can at least with bare minimum charges, they can at least eat something. So now the government can help them to protect workers. How government can fix the minimum wage rate and working hours. Government can provide cheap loans so that these people can become self-employed. Government can provide cheap and affordable basic services like health, education, food. I have given you example of the Indira Rasoi. The government can frame new laws which can provide provisions for the overtime, paid leave and leave due to sickness. So these are the measures which the government have started under the various schemes. So now page 33, students, here we have to talk about sectors in terms of ownership, that is public and private sectors. So the another way of classifying economic activities into sectors could be on the basis of who owns the assets and is responsible for the delivery of services. Like in public sector, the government owns the assets and provide all the services, and in private sector the ownership of assets and delivery of services is in the hand of private individuals. Like railway or post office is example of public sector. Tisco and Reliance is the example of private sector. Now the Modi government, they have done the 5% privatization of railways. Okay, so 5% railways are being privatized. Now the private players will enter our railways. Earlier the government of India was having complete monopoly on the Indian railways. So activities in the private sector, they are guided by the motive to earn profit. So in the private sector, the private players, they are doing all this manufacturing, they are entering because they want profit. But on the other hand, government provides the services. Even they bear the loss, the government bear the loss, and they provide services. So the purpose of public sector is not just to earn the profit, but to provide the services, to take care of the citizens. And the government raise money through taxes and they spend on these taxes, whatever money is collected, and they provide services to the people from this. And the modern day government, they have to spend a lot on all the activities. So now we have to see how public sector contributes to the economic development of the nation. So there are several things needed by society as a whole, but which the private sector cannot provide at the reasonable cost. Okay, let's see how. So now page 34, students, we were discussing earlier that how the public sector contributes to the economic development. Like in certain areas are there where the private sector cannot enter, and it is not possible for them to do investment there, and collecting money from thousands of people is not possible for the private sector. Okay, even if they do provide these things, then they will charge high rate of interest, like construction of roads is there, bridges, railways, generating electricity, providing irrigation through dams. So these works are taken up by the government only, because here spending is more, these projects spending is more. Okay, so it is not easy for the private sector to enter into these areas, and there are certain activities which the government has to support. Like the private sector, they may not continue their production or business unless government provides some subsidies in the form of electricity, the subsidized electricity, if the government provides them. Like if the government will provide them the electricity at the cost of generation, then it will push up the cost of production of these goods in many of the industries, and then many of the industries, they have to shut down because their cost of production will go such higher. So the government here steps in and provide them subsidized electricity so that these industries can also continue their production. So government has to be a part of the cost in the mixed economy. And similarly, government in India, they buy wheat and rice from the farmers at a fair price. So MSP, minimum support price, like the government procures from the farmers at MSP, minimum support price, and through PDS then provides to the poor people at very low cost. So rest of the cost is bear by the government. So there are large number of activities which are the primary responsibility of the government. Education, health is there. Education, the compulsory education, elementary education, free education which the government is providing. Then the health facilities, vaccinations, other things which the dispensaries and the hospitals which government is providing. And then similarly we know that nearly half of our India's children are malnourished. Okay, so here we have to talk about IMR, infant mortality rate. So here in Madhya Pradesh it is highest, and it is higher in Odisha also. And government also needs to pay attention to such aspects of human development, like availability of drinking water, housing facility for the poor, food and nutrition. So all these things, it is a duty of the government to take care of the poorest and most ignored regions of the country through increased spending in such areas. So here the government needs to focus, they have to increase their spending so that benefit should reach to the lower strata of people of our society.